So welcome to another episode, and this is the Post-Crucible episode of the Talking Bulls podcast, and I'm your host, Michael Wright, Writer74. I'll say hello to my co-host, Lee.
Hi everyone, it's good to be here. Welcome aboard and welcome to Crucible Catch-Up.
And of course, becoming maybe the third wheel here, and maybe co-host number two, but we have, of course, our snooker superstar, Brian Dobson. Brian, good to see you again.
You too. It's good to be back, and looking forward to chatting about the final few days of the Crucible.
Yeah, so thanks. We did this last week. We've done this each week during the tournament, really, and we were talking a bit around round two last week. So I think if we go for the quarters and then just talk through how it went from there onwards, and obviously everybody knows, but it gives us a chance to reflect on what happened, I think. So the first one, I think, was Bingtown Williams. Now, I'm trying to remember if we talked about this last week.
I think we had the first sessions and a lot of the quarterfinals. Last week.
Well, let's pick it apart then. Let's have a look at the four then. So the four quarterfinals, we had Bingtown very close, lost 11-13 to Williams. We had Stuart Bingham went out to Judd Trump 13-8. Quite a stunning kind of final session from Trump there. Leszansky Higgins, that's the one I went to. Wow. And that was 13-12 as we know to Higgins. And Stephen Maguire, Ronnie O'Sullivan. That O'Sullivan fella showed some promise, and he went through 13-5. So let's pick those apart then. So the first talking point really was about the Crucible Pigeon. I'm not sure if we talked about this last week or not, but this was during the Williams Bingtown match, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Pigeon made an entrance on that match. We did speak about it briefly last time, but what a tough match for both players, Williams and Bingtown. 13-11 sort of says it all. It was a sort of match attritional, I would say, but Williams got the better. Williams can handle the pressure. He's good in tight matches and close situations. So a great match.
Yeah, absolutely. Bingtown just didn't give up. And he's such a tenacious player. He reminds me so much of Mark Selby. He's got that granite and just that kind of determination. He doesn't play any rash shots. It's always very methodical. And, he gave Williams such a great game. I thought Mark would probably win more comfortably than he did. It was nip and tuck all the way.
Sure was, and I think I mentioned the Pigeon because I saw the tweet from one of his accounts or her accounts, the Crucible Pigeon, saying today, "What do I do now?" So clearly, like a lot of us now, at a bit of a loss when we finished the final. So Williams there, and again, I think we tracked him all the way through, and you particularly, Brian, had an interest really in how Williams got on. He at that point he still looked, didn't he, as if he could go all the way. He'd flown through the early rounds, but then a massive win that was. Yeah,
very much so. And, controversial possibly, but I actually think Williams played the best snooker of the whole tournament. I think he was so unlucky. Well, I know we'll come to it in a moment, but what happened, in the next round. But it was just so gracious around the table. I think his break building was phenomenal, and great that he got through. But you have to feel for Bingtown as well, because he gave it his heart and soul.
Yeah, really close. The second one was Bingham Trump and 13-8, which suggests that Trump had most of it his own way, really. I was in there for and we'll talk about this a bit, but my Crucible debut as a fan, really, but I went there to see, I got the tickets for Leszansky Higgins on that table, but of course Bingham Trump was on the other table, and all you could see across the score and across the barrier was just the score clocking up and break upon break for Trump. We didn't really let Bingham in much there, did he?
No, I mean, Bingham went 8-5 up in the end up. And I think it's to Trump's credit and how he's became such a complete player now. I think maybe a couple of years ago he wouldn't have won that match. He won the last frames in that to take it. But I think maybe 2 or 3, 4 years ago, that possibly wouldn't have happened. But he's a complete player now, Trump, I think, and he really dug in to win that match.
Yeah, couldn't agree with more. I mean, when Bingham went 8-5 up, I did think that his Crucible experience might show, and I think he might get over the line here, but he never won another frame, and Trump won 8-8 on the spin. And even when it went to 8-8 for the final session, I thought it might be nip and tuck, and it might be a 13-11, 13-12, but no, not to be. Trump ran away with it in the end.
Yeah, ruthless, absolutely ruthless. And again, I think, I'm not sure whether you said it, Lee, or somebody was saying the other week that they felt that Trump was just going to keep going from strength to strength through the tournament. I think you may have said that.
Well, Michael, I thought he would get better as the tournament went on, but I did expect him to reach his best, in the semi-finals. But I think he just sort of played at the same level all the way through. I think there was a lot more form to be shown in that. But yeah, he certainly dug in to win that game against Bingham, because Bingham's class act. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and we're talking, the amount of players we're talking about now, ex-world champions. I mean, we're not talking about players just trying to get there. They've done it. Okay, so that was the first two. Lisowski Higgins. Now, I thought, I must admit, when I saw which table I was going to get to see, it was either going to be Bingham Trump or Lisowski Higgins. I was hoping for Lisowski Higgins, and. It's a weird story because I've got baby duties still, so I needed to get back. So I missed the last two frames. So it might not have gone to a last frame side, but it did in this case. Lisowski Higgins. Lisowski for me in that final, I don't know if you saw it at that final session. Early on in the session, I thought he looked a little bit nervous, a little bit shaky. I don't think he played with the freedom he normally plays with, but he kind of grew into it, and in the end, again, could have gone either way, couldn't it? But Higgins just maybe showed that extra guile and experience at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. A bit nervy from Lisowski at the start of the session, but he started to play really well and really pushed Higgins. And I just thought it was class from John. The last two frames, 105 to force it aside, and then a 72 in the last frame. That's the sort of thing that guys like Higgins do to win matches. But all credit to Lisowski, a great championship, and there's a lot more to come from him.
Yeah, I'm with you, both you guys as well on this. I think Lisowski really came of age in that quarterfinal. I think there's a lot more to come of him from next season. He was tentative, he was very, very shaky, but I think certainly going 12-11 up, the balance was very much in his favour, and I thought, well, if anybody can win the last two frames, it's John, and that, obviously that's exactly what happened. But no, I think he played terrific. He got absolutely nothing to be ashamed of, losing 13-12 to John.
And John, guys like John, they do it so often in that position when their back's up against the wall that you sort of half expect it to happen. And on this occasion, it did.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jack can certainly, hold his head high there.
Absolutely.
I think he'll come back. I think he's a player who just is going to get better and better. I just think he looks like he's got the raw materials, doesn't he? He just looks to me like somebody who just a few more Crucible campaigns, and who knows, he could go all the way potentially.
Yeah, I think you'll see this for what it is, Michael and Brian, and it's just part of his progress. Really, he's still gaining experience, and it's going to be dangerous in years to come.
I think there's so many of young players they've got a free flowing potting game, and there's no doubt about it that Jack's got that in spades. But I think we're starting to get a little bit more ring craft now, and starting to get. Understand there's a lot more to it than just potting balls, and I think we'll see a lot more of that in the future.
And of course, we've seen the same thing with Judd, out and out potter, and he's got the whole game now. And of course, we've seen it with Ronnie as well.
Yeah,
fantastic potter, but just as good in the safety game now, in his career.
Definitely.
And talking of Ronnie, that was the last quarter final and the 13-5 scoreline against Stephen Maguire. Did you get to see much of that? Any thoughts on how that one went?
I never seen a lot of that match, to be fair. I think I seen the first session, and then I was busy doing something, but probably unexpected from my point of view. 13-5, yeah, not a lot to say on that.
I think I saw the final session of that one, and I've got to be honest, sort of Maguire seemed to capitulate a little bit. He seemed to sort of like decide enough was enough a little bit earlier, earlier in the match, I thought. Obviously Ronnie played great, but he didn't play as well as he did in the semis or finals. So I think sort of Stephen didn't turn up in the last session.
Mm.
Then we go on to the semi-finals. So we've talked about these guys already tonight, but maybe a bit more about where they went next. So Williams Trump, I mean, again, Williams, kind of the character he showed, the topsy-turvy nature of the sessions, and a last frame decider. Trump comes through, could have gone either way, but a real thrill, that one. I think that was a cracking match. Yeah, what did you think of that? That was top stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, a fantastic match. And the Crucible always throws up matches like this, whether it be, first round, second round, quarter, semis, final even, 17-16, great for the crowds and everyone in the Crucible. And of course, he thought Trump was going to run away with it. 7-1 up, 9-2 up, and 12-5 up. And, I suppose Trump would be expecting Williams to come back. He's one of those players, isn't he? Great comeback. Really unlucky not to win the match in the end, and Trump fell over the line 17-16. But a great match.
Yeah, I saw the last, the tail end of that match, and when Trump was 12-5 ahead, I thought, it's all over really. Maybe Williams get a couple more frames, but he started this remarkable comeback, and I thought, he could well do it here. And then, watching it at 16-16, I think Williams missed a blue off the spot. And I kind of knew then on that Judd was going to clear, and I'm sure he thought the same thing. That Judd was going to come and dish, and that's exactly what he did. But, fantastic match.
I just remember Williams's face when he came off at the end of the session, where he made that big comeback and just unbelievable snooker, and he just looked as if to say, well, I've still got it in me then, something like that. I just thought, oh, he's not out of it. But that was incredible, that comeback. And but yeah, poor old Brian there, you thought he might do the job for you, but just let you down.
I had a few quid resting on that, and I've got to say, I was out at the time, and I wasn't surprised. I met some people at the pub. It was on in the pub, and I thought, I'm going nowhere but watching the end of this match. And when it got to 16 all, I thought it's could be anybody's here. It's a toss of a coin type thing. But I was very, very disappointed just with that result. But fair play, in any decider, it's a tough one either way, isn't it? Really.
Well, as long as you didn't tweet Williams and tell him he's lost your money and all the rest of it, as long as you didn't do that, then you're fine. That's when it gets toxic. But yeah, and sadly that happens, as we know. John Higgins, Ronnie O'Sullivan, that was the other semi-final. So we talked about the class of 92, 17-11. Again, class wins out, although on another day there's not much between them. But Ronnie really shone through there, didn't he?
Quite remarkable, really. Looking at the stats, Higgins getting 11 frames. The stats are 17 breaks, over 50 for Ronnie, including 5 centuries in that match. And John's highest break in the first 20 frames, 58. I mean, remarkable stats. And to get 11 frames, I think John's done really well there.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of, John just hung on to his coattails, I think, throughout that match. But there was sort of signs of John getting frustrated towards the end. He banged his cue a couple of times quite dramatically when he was, obviously feeling it and suffering. And then Ronnie just started to pull away, and John just couldn't hold on to him. But yeah, as you said, those stats say everything. Highest break 58. It's just not John Higgins' standard.
And it shows you how much it means to them, because quite often when they're playing their matches, you don't see any reaction. You think, I wonder if they're either way on this. I wonder if they're taking it a lot better than what they're showing. And it just shows you it does mean the world to these guys, and sometimes that overspills.
Yeah, definitely.
You kind of want to see that, don't you? I mean, I assume you do. I want to see that. I want to see what it means to people, and I want to see that they're not robots, and that it really, not that I want to see misery, but I kind of want to see what it means to them. And I guess that almost, not quite, but it almost typifies the season for Higgins in a way, in the sense that he's been so close so many times and he's just not got over the line. I mean, on that one, he's up against somebody who, you hopefully don't play him too often, but but that took Rocket Ronnie into the final. A good start for Judd Trump. He got a 72 break in that first frame, but after then, Ronnie just took control very early, and I think you may have said it before, Lee, or certainly it has been said about that. He's a good leader in the sense that once he gets ahead, he seems to enjoy being ahead and keeping it.
Yeah, I think if Ronnie gets any sort of lead, he's such a good front runner that it's so hard to pull him back. It's so hard to, I think, make breaks for 4 or 5 frames and pull a lead back. Is a class act. He's too good not to make breaks he's himself. So, 16 50+ breaks in that match, including 3 tons. And I thought Trump was pretty much on a par to what he had been right through the tournament. His standard to play right through the tournament. And of course, with Sullivan playing the way he was, Trump needed a bit more in the locker.
Yeah, exactly. I think, when the final started, I thought, well, Judd really needs to share the first 4 frames with Ronnie to have really any chance. And, when he went 5-1 down, I thought the writing could be on the wall here, especially the one he lost on the black when Ronnie played the combat into the middle. And Judd really should have had that frame, and I think that must have hurt him a bit. And, before we knew it, Ronnie was pulling away, and I thought, it's going to be hard work from here on in.
Yeah, I know that frame you're talking about, Brian. It was an incredible clearance, and such a big stage of the match. And again, we've said it before, it's just what these guys do under pressure. But certainly one of the best clearances I've seen.
Definitely. I mean, it looked for all of the world that Judd had that frame. And then he played a shot right-handed where he wobbled the red in the jaws, and then, he never got a look in after that. And, you could tell that affected him. Yeah,
it could have been a turning point, that frame, definitely. Mentally.
Sorry, go on. You go, Brian.
No, I was just going to say, he certainly, we'll talk about it now, but obviously came out on the following day and looked a different player on that afternoon. I think obviously the good night's sleep and kind of reflecting on what had gone, it obviously done him the world of good, because the third session was really when he came into his own.
Well, he did admit that himself. When he was being interviewed, he said he was feeling the effects of his match with Williams, and that night's sleep he had after the first day of the final. He did say he was a bit more refreshed. So yeah, and that showed in his play. Yeah, very much so. I think on the Sunday night, the session, that he was missing some pots by a long, long way. The way he was threatening the pocket, and you got the the worrying signs that he was going to get kind of steamrolled on the second day, but came out a different player.
And I suppose, we've covered this a lot with players on the podcast in the past, where they've talked about, it's you against yourself, in a sense, in that when you're at the table, your opponent can't beat you when you're at the table, but they can when they're at the table. And it was, I don't know, I know you've pointed out some of the errors, but overall, he had a fairly tight game. It's just that when Ronnie got in and got himself into good positions, he was just ruthless, wasn't he? It's absolutely He can't. I don't remember, but he can't have broke down on breaks too many times in that whole match.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Henry said, you know, when in the studio that whenever he was in the balls, he just made a break. You know, he couldn't remember any balls, any easy balls that he'd missed. You know, and I mean, he's just so good in the balls that as soon as he gets in, you just expect him to clear up, and you know, 9 times out of 10, he's doing that.
Yeah, definitely. I think if Trump had come up against any other player, especially on day 2, he would have, he would have gone on to possibly lift it, but just Ronnie was just too strong.
And it gives the impression, doesn't he, Ronnie, with a lot of the social media stuff he puts out or the interviews, there's almost a feeling of, well, you know, it's like he said about the record, I'm not really interested in records, I don't really look at the numbers. He must be chuffed that he's equal to Stephen Hendry's 7 wins. And he must be thinking, I'd like number 8 now. And he's already said, hasn't he, that he's probably going to do this again next year. But I mean, I don't know, you don't know, I don't know, but what's your opinion? You know, is this all for show, this whole thing of, well, it doesn't matter too much and it's a grind and I'm not sure? Or underneath that, is he practicing hard? Is there a Steely centre to him? He's having to keep going, and there's just a persona that he's putting out there, and that's what you can get caught up in.
I certainly think you've nailed it there, Michael. I think it's exactly that. You know, the guys in the studio says he puts in a lot of practice, and you know, he can have all the natural ability in the world, but you've got to put in that practice to be that good. I don't care who you are or what ability you've got to put in the practice. So yeah, I think it just depends what sort of mood Ronnie's in on the day, to what he says and what he comes out with. But he is an absolute genius on the table. He deserves 7. I'm devastated he's got 7 because I'm a huge Hendry fan. But I will concede as well that I think he's the best player ever. Not just because he's got 7, but I think, you know, in the past, when his head wasn't right, he could already have 10. And I think there is more to come for Ronnie, but it's certainly the best player I've seen.
Yeah, I could just echo that, to be honest, guys. I mean, I think O'Sullivan is just as steely as all the other top pros are. And I think the reason he just kind of deflects it a little bit is just to sort of, he doesn't want the pressure or that added pressure on him of expectation. And just to say, you know, I'm not bothered about the numbers. I'll just turn up. It's a bit of fun. If I win, I win. If I don't, I don't. I really think that masks his actual determination that he totally and utterly wants to, you know, dominate, be the best, and you know, lift as much silverware as he can. And I think certainly even the last 2, 3, 4 years, he's become even more ruthless in that respect. You know, the Ronnie of 20 years ago would have given in so much easily, and I think these days it means so much more to him. And I think you saw that at the end of the final of how emotional he was and what it meant to him to finally sort of go on par with Hendry.
I think you make a good point there, Brian. You know, he's more willing to stick in these days. He's got Dr. Steve Peters in his corner, and I really think if it wasn't for him, he might not be playing at the moment. And another point you made there, it must be really hard for Ronnie, and I think we forget this sometimes because there's so much, there's a lot of people want a piece of him, you know, and there must be a lot of times he's just thinking, you know, get me out of here, or I don't want to see anybody, because there's so much, you know, pressure on him to, you know, be somebody, be Ronnie and all the time, and it must be a bit wearing at times.
Yeah, very much so. I think there's so many times just in interviews he was saying, you know, I hate this tournament, it's too much pressure, you know, I'd rather play a best of 3 or something somewhere. You know, you can understand what he's feeling and going through, but I think he's just trying to focus on each session, not even each match, and just sort of get himself through that. But there's no doubt about it, as you say, Lee. You know, he is determined. He must put the hours of practice in to get that level of precision. and I think it means, you know, it means the world to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you say, you could tell that at the end, couldn't you? You know, as you say, Brian, he got emotional. It was clear he had his family there, and the three Ronnies, the three generations of Ronnies, I mean, I don't know what he said to Judd when they had the clinch, but I don't know about you, but that went on for longer than I thought. I kept looking at my watch, and I kept thinking of, as the transmission paused or something, is this clinch still happening? I mean, some players have lost in. I think he got his 147 quicker than that clinch.
You're absolutely right. But, you know, I thought it was lovely to see a human side of Ronnie, and, you know, there was no pretense or anything like that. I think that came from the heart, and he was very touched with what Judd said to him, and it was nice to see, although it lasted a bit long.
Yeah, I have a feeling that you know, Ronnie may have gone a bit, and maybe Judd was keeping him upright, because I think he was starting to break down a bit there. But yeah, you know, it would be interesting if we ever find out one day whatever he did say. But yeah, it was lovely to see. Although it was probably uncomfortable after about 30 seconds.
It'd be nice to think that he was mellowing in his old age.
Yeah, indeed.
I mean, I don't know. I've gone the other way with this. I mean, for me, I can't imagine holding anyone for that long unless I'm trying to save them from drowning or something. But at the same time, I think we should see this in all the matches now. I mean, I think there's got to be a movement here that you must have a big man hug at the end of your match. And I don't mean to be gender specific. It doesn't have to be a man hug. You know, I think there needs to be a big clinch, a big hug it out at the end of every match now. I think he set a standard there, as he has with everything else that he's done. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more hugging next season. Don't know about you guys.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Embrace the hug.
Embrace the hug.
I like it.
Yeah.
But I do think, you know, when you put so much into a match and when it means so much on any level, because I've been in that situation as well, you've tried so hard to win, and when you do sort of fall over the line, although you didn't fall over the line, but when you do get that win, you actually achieve what you want to achieve, the adrenaline stops pumping, and you know, it's been pumping for the whole match, and then it stops pumping. That's I think when the emotion comes out of you.
Yeah, very much so. I think one thing that we haven't discussed as well is the Olivier Martial incident at the beginning of the final, because when all that kicked off and Ronnie clearly wasn't happy, I thought, is this going to dislodge his concentration, and is he going to start and, you know, possibly throw his toys out the pram a little bit? And he seemed certainly very agitated by it, and I had a feeling that psychologically it might upset him, but he seemed to come out for the evening session in a different frame of mind.
I actually don't know what happened there. I missed that. I was away for the weekend. I don't know what happened.
Well, basically, there was a kind of the balls were replaced, and Ronnie wasn't happy with the way the table was, and he basically sort of, you know, asked the referee if he'd take the shot for him almost, and even though the balls were replaced, he still wasn't happy with the situation, and he kind of accused, said that Olivier was having a go and kind of creating unnecessary, incident, if you like, and it seemed to get out of hand rather quickly, but also sort of, you know, dispersed rather quickly as well. But it just seemed as if they'd had words before, or it just seemed a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly the clips I've seen. Maybe you've described some of the context in the bit before it, Brian, because all I saw really was that, you know, the referee goes over to him and is leaning right into him as if to say, we don't need everyone to hear what's going on here. But and then he almost then starts pointing at him in ways he walks off, doesn't he? And he's saying, you know, don't you start, and all the rest of it. But he couldn't quite hear what he'd done that he was telling him off for.
There was one bit where he'd replaced the balls, and then Olivier had said to the judge, "Are you happy?" And then said, "Ronnie, are you happy?" Yes. Then Ronnie got down and took the shot, and then got up and said, "No, I'm not happy." you need to replace them again. And then he'd said, well, I actually already asked you, were you happy? And you said yes. And he said, well, look, don't start, because I'm telling you it's not in the right place as it was. And it started to get kind of a bit unnecessary, as if he was kind of deliberately being antagonising. Only he can be the judge of whatever it was he saw or didn't saw. But it just seemed to be that he was not happy with where the balls were replaced, even though they obviously looked at the TV footage.
Yeah, I mean, Ronnie certainly likes to test the referees and test their composure, and we see it all the time with Ronnie. You know what I mean? I think he's a bit unnecessarily harsh with referees, where it could be easily resolved. But that's a shame that happened. On as much for Olivier refereeing the final, it's a great moment for him as well.
Yeah,
so it's a great game for him.
I just thought I think it was just probably after frame 3 or 4 when I just thought it might distract his confidence, not so much his confidence, but his ability to focus on the match ahead. But in fairness to it, he seemed to sort of forget about it pretty quick. But it did seem rather unnecessary from what I saw.
Yeah.
Well, equally, it's an impact on Judd, isn't it? I mean, I think Judd said something, didn't he? Didn't he say something along the lines of, "Did you have to do that now, or did you have to talk to him now about it?" As if to say, couldn't that have waited till the end of the frame or the end of the session or whatever?
Yeah.
So I think he was almost saying, can we just play snooker? It felt like anyway. It's a bit. I don't know whether it is. I mean, there's so much there, isn't there? The kidology, the kind of trying to get in heads or distract or whatever. I mean, you see it in other sports where the referees, you can almost see in football, for example, the players are always trying to, warn the referee that they're getting held when there's a corner. Oh, they keeps holding me, in the hope, I guess, that at some point he gives them a penalty because he just keeps tapping away at him. And so you wonder how much of that is Ronnie almost kind of pressing buttons and kind of, you don't know what he's got to gain from it, do you? There might just be something about his personality, but that's the trouble then, isn't it? Because then people talk about that instead of the great snooker that he plays and the fact that there's not anyone really who can, hold him down when he's in that kind of form. There's nobody like him, is there? And there hasn't been before. And it's great to see Hendry. I mean, Hendry was magnanimous really in saying, well, I'm honoured to share this with Ronnie, and look what Ronnie's done for the game. So to hear Hendry say that, again, it's one of the best endorsement you could have got, really. There's got to be something about the mental side. You said about Steve Peters. Now, we've seen players retire early when arguably they could have gone on and got a lot more. And we're talking about, the Davises, the Hendrys, etc. Ronnie's still going. I mean, Ronnie's in his late 40s now, I think, isn't he? And he's still going. And you couldn't bet against him getting another 1, 2, 3 championships. Who knows? You couldn't bet against that, could you?
And why not? He looks like there's no signs of slowing down at all. He's still a phenomenal player, and obviously still puts the work in. So therefore, it suggests to me that he's very dedicated still, and he wants more out of the game. So yeah, I think maybe next year, number 8. Why not?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an argument that he could finish with 10. There's no reason why he can't win another 1 or another 2 or 3, because he's clearly still got the game. He's still got the appetite. I think he would love to surpass Hendry's record, and he's fit, and there's no reason why he couldn't do it.
I think as long as Ronnie in his own head wants it, I think he can do whatever he wants. He can play as long as he wants, as long as he wants it.
Yeah. So I think that the biggest opponent to O'Sullivan is O'Sullivan.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I know the others will raise their game and will try and raise their game, and there's going to be still a lot of players knocking on the door to lift that title. But you can't rule Ronnie out from doing another 2 or 3 for sure.
The difference just seems to be, as you've said already, really, the difference, and I'm no expert, but it seems to be that thing where you can think of other players that you think are really good and will be good. So we're talking about Zhao Xintong, people like that, and Bing Tao, Kyron and Jack Lizard. We've talked already about a few people that we think eventually could be at that kind of level, but it's such a big jump from that, isn't it? Where you have 2 or 3 bad, frames, or you're missing stuff you shouldn't miss, or, in the game I watched with Lazowski, I think he tried to get a really thin cut a few times or a few thin hits and he missed the ball. And you just don't see, when Ronnie's on it, you don't really see him do much of that kind of stuff. You just kind of think the level you have to get to compete with this guy, there's not many people who can live with that, and that's the worry in a way. It's a bit like tennis, isn't it? When you get Nadal and Federer and Murray and all of them out the way, and Djokovic, a whole new breed will come through and do well, but they might be really good players, but they're not going to get anywhere near them when they've got those guys at the top. A changing of the guard, we talked about that earlier in the season, but that was when we had the shorter games, when we had the kind of tournaments, and everyone was starting to say, oh, is it the Chinese invasion? And are we now going to see a real changing of who the top players are? We've just got the class of 92 dominating the World Championships in the longer form at the end of a very long, and certainly compared to previous seasons with COVID, a long season, a lot of matches going on. We've got almost the usual suspects in the semi-finals, despite the fact that we've seen all these other players during the season showing real promise and getting into finals and winning. So does that tell us that the World Championships, it's a leading question, does that tell us that the World Championships find out the true mettle of a player? As the cream risen to the top, will we see the others come back and perhaps take some semi-final places in the coming years?
Well, personally, I think you've got it right there. I think it does test the players, the World Championship, and I think it should test the players, and I think the best players should be winning that event. But going back to likes of Lazowski, and the difference between Lazowski, the likes of Lazowski and a Ronnie or a Higgins or a Williams, I don't believe that's as much to do with ability as it is to do with a mindset. I think those guys have just got it upstairs, and hopefully Lazowski and the likes of those players will get to that level. But I think at the moment, and it's got to go back to what these guys have done in the past as well. It must be so hard starting a match with these guys thinking, how am I going to beat these guys? They're so good. So I think it's more of a mindset. I think these guys have already got that ability.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's just, I think, the guys such as the class of 92 have got that tenacity that when you're talking about best of 25s, best of 33s, best of 35s, they're going to come out on top because they've been there before, they've done it, they know what it takes to do that. In a season where you've had a lot of first-time winners, as great as that is, a lot of that has been, best of 7s, best of 11s, much shorter format. And I think once you get into that Crucible environment where you're playing long matches over long days, multiple sessions, that whole 17 days, it's what that test is about. And I think there's so many young players that have faltered really on the bigger stage because they're just not used to that kind of long session matches. So yeah, I think it is the ultimate test. I think it should remain so.
That's an interesting point, Brian. I don't think thought of that. The fact that actually the class of 92 have been around long enough to play in these longer term matches a lot more. Some of the younger guys have maybe only been to the Crucible a couple of times and maybe only got to the second round or whatever. So as you say, there's almost something around. You feel like these more established guys walk in fairly comfortable. Okay, nervous at times, but they look comfortable. They own the arena when they walk in. They don't look as if this is at all or anything different. I'm sure they feel different to that inside. But as you say, a lot of the other tournaments we've seen are the equivalent of a session in the World Championships. The eight frames in a session, and a lot of these matches are over in that session. So completely different world, really, isn't it? And as we've seen, and we all talked up the chances of Robertson and O'Sullivan between this when we had our first episode pre-tournament, and we all said one of those two will win it. And the Bryans are, kind of nailing it. Front row Brian completely nailed it. And actually, he's won our Crucible predictor game. But as I say, it's just that thing where when it comes down to the crunch, these guys they've been there, they've done it. we always ask on our podcast the players who they think the next debut world champion will be, and they all come up with a name, but you almost need to say the question, and when do you think that will be? Because at the moment,
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like it's happening quick.
Yeah, very much so. There's so much great talent there, but not all of them, only a handful of them have got that staying power to go the full 17 days.
Yeah, I would agree there, Brian. And obviously, the more they play in the event, the more experience they're going to gain, and that will help their mental state dealing with all because there's a lot of different circumstances that can happen at the Crucible and over the longer match than what they would play in a normal tournament. So I think playing in the World Championships can only strengthen their game and strengthen their mind. So yeah, I think the more you play in it, the better chance you've got.
Yeah, absolutely. I know one question that came up of the Crucible was, should it remain at the Crucible? What's your thoughts on that, guys?
Yes. I'm a traditionalist, Brian, and I've watched it at the Crucible all my life, and it would tear my heart out if it ever left the Crucible. And I just think it's a spiritual home, and it should stay.
Yeah, I'm very much of the same feelings on it. Appreciate what Michael was saying just before we started talking about the size of the Crucible is small, but I think maybe that is what makes it the fact that you're sitting on the front row, you're virtually touching the player. There's not much room when that partition is down, but that maybe adds to the pressure of the environment. So I know there's an argument of building another Crucible or building another section of the theatre to house more people, but in doing so, do you lose the atmosphere of what makes the Crucible unique? So as far as myself is concerned, I think we shouldn't tamper with it and should leave it exactly the way it is.
I think if you did make another Crucible, say 2,500 seats, and I was quite surprised to hear Barry Hearn say that he would welcome that. I think if you did build something a lot bigger, I would think you would. I think it would be impossible to think that you wouldn't lose some of that atmosphere. And as you say, Brian, I think that is what makes the championships so special, and the players will be able to feel that atmosphere. And I think that's what brings the misses into the game, really, and brings us tighter games. And there'll be nowhere like the Crucible for the atmosphere. So yeah, it should definitely stay, in my opinion.
Definitely.
And thanks for raising the question, Brian. It's a really good talking point. I mean, that was my first one I'd gone to, the first time I'd been to the Crucible, and I said to you before we joined that the size surprised me. I don't know why. I guess it's because on the camera shots you can make a place look big. It's it's a bit like I went to the House of Commons for work a while ago, and I was amazed how small that is. And again, it's a similar thing. It looks big on the TV because of the way they shoot it, but it's tiny. And I don't think that's a problem, is it? I think it's the fact that when you first look at it, for me, the magic bit was seeing the sign with the wording, the Crucible, that bit of the wording. I just thought, well, that already makes you feel like this is quite cool, irrespective of what color the inside is or where how big it is. It feels special when you're in there, for sure. I think as a fan, you go in there and you just sit in and see. And with the two table setup, when I went in there was that element of the screens up at the start. All the players are introduced from both tables, but there is a little bit of, you can hear what's going on in the other table, and sometimes you're thinking, like the first couple of frames on that session with Jack and John Higgins. I'm not going to say it was turgid, that's unfair, but it was a little bit. There weren't really breaks going on, and it was finding out where each other were, I think. On the other table, you just hear it claps all the time. You can see the little score in the corner, Trump, more breaks coming up, and you're kind of thinking, oh, can I not just like see that bit and then come back and then wait for this when this warms up a bit? And of course, you don't get that on the single frame setup. But it's got a soul. That's what struck me. It just got a soul and a feel about it. And I went to Milton Keynes in November, for the English Open. And you've got the 4 table setups, and the TV table looks very impressive. They've got a clear kind of a rig that they take away for all the tournaments, and it looks the same wherever you are almost for a lot of the tournaments. But in a sense, that's the problem, because it's very professional. It looks really cool, but it hasn't really, it's not memorable. You wouldn't kind of go, oh, you know, there's a real heart and soul here. But as a Crucible, you just thought, and maybe the older you get, I don't know whether you get more traditional, but there is an element of remembering past finals and past winners. And imagining Dennis Taylor standing there with his cue above his head and all the rest of it, looking like Chewbacca. You know, you can kind of see all of this and think that's all there, and you can't take that away. And another Crucible wouldn't have that, even if it was just across the, you know, that square, that you wouldn't have that anywhere else. So the traditionalists, I think, will win out for a while. It sounds like it, and it sounds like Barry Hearn wants it to stay in Sheffield, even if they relocate it slightly or extend it. But yeah, it's an interesting one. There's more impressive stadia you could use, and you could get bigger crowds, and you could make a bigger deal of it without doubt, because it is the showpiece of the season. But as Barry Hearn said, you're getting millions and millions and millions of people watching it all around the world. You can't go to it and get tickets. So even if you've got a small number going, you've still got a massive pull for the tournament. It kind of doesn't matter too much about how many people are there. That's kind of what I got from what he was saying.
Yeah, I think that the argument, probably what Barry is coming from, is a bit like what they've done at Ali Pali for the Masters, where you've got like a you know, a sofa seating area for VIPs. You've got the Century Club for serving, you know, food and drink and champagne and all the rest of it, overlooking the tables. So you can cater for you know, corporate events and the elite as well. So I think, you know, I can understand completely where he's coming from. That making it bigger is going to attract obviously more people in, and you can have a bit more of a tiered environment. But I think it might lose what the Crucible is all about ultimately.
It is such a shame, because you would lose a bit. You would lose something regardless what you've done to the Crucible, or if you took it away for the Crucible. But you know, it would be nice to get a ticket as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But just you know, the basic things such as, you know, just coming through those curtains is just, and coming down the steps is so iconic that if you change that and they come out of you know, some other area or entrance to the theatre, it just isn't going to be quite the same, or at least how you remember it.
Yeah, and if they do change it, you know, they do a 2,500 seater. If they do change it, is there any going back? Have you lost that forever?
Yeah, definitely. But I think we're unanimous in keeping it as it is.
Yeah, and that's the end of the season. So, you know, we reflect on the season, combination of it. The right man wins, the man who we all probably think is the best player to play. Doesn't mean he's going to win the World Championship every year, and he certainly hasn't. But it's all gone to plan in that way. What do we do for the next few months? It's quite a break now, isn't it?
Well, I think we get back on our PlayStations and start playing some League Snooker.
Yeah, I mean, it's a slightly rhetorical point, really. But I guess it's that bit now, isn't it? Of you know, we look forward to the start of another season. People will be getting excited, booking tickets for next year's Crucible, because they're still feeling a thrill from it now. I think my only other reflection from going is that I think the sport could be branded a lot more, and I think it could reach out more. I was surprised to see quite a small souvenir store, for example, in the merchandise part. And it's not a big venue, but they could have dotted things around the city or the centre or whatever. There's not that much merch. You can go online and find loads of merch, but actually around the venue there's some. But for the showpiece of the sport, it's quite modest, really, to be honest. Having gone to loads of gigs where the bands have bigger sets than that, for a one-off band on a Tuesday night at Nottingham Arena. So there is something around the whole branding of it, but at the same time, it's that balance, isn't it? Because I guess that still comes back to the thing of it's very traditional. People don't always like a lot of change with it. Why change it when it doesn't need it? but there maybe is an argument of let's listen to some of the youngsters, and you need to reach out and make it attractive for them. And if the Crucible stays, well, that's fine. But what else can you do that would make it appealing and get people to keep coming and watching it, and then look forward to May every year? So that's maybe something that will come up, I guess, in future podcasts, and I'm sure that the likes of Jack Lisowski, Judd Trump, some of the younger crew kind of coming through will be still knocking on Jason Ferguson's door and saying, let's look at how else we can do things different with this sport.
Yeah, and I think eventually all sports evolve, just like all things evolve. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what's done in the future, and interesting to see if the World Championship stays at Crucible, which fingers crossed, I hope it does.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. It's just it's the home of snooker. As I say, football has Wembley, and snooker has the Crucible, and I think it needs to stay that way. It's I am very much a traditionalist as far as this game goes, but it's I just think it will lose something, and you don't want to tamper with something that isn't broken.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it will certainly be here longer than Ronnie and Judge Clinch, I think. So I think we're okay. I think it's going to be around for a while. And a shout out really just to say thanks to you guys. A shout out to the group. We did the Superfans episode at the start of this. I did meet Kelly, so Kelly's well known to a lot of fans. I did meet Kelly, albeit it wasn't very long that we could get to talk. So maybe again at some point we'll be able to. But that was fun. It was nice to see her at the Crucible, which she looks very much at home in. And that was fun. A shout out to my friends who I went with. So that was Ruth and Dan. So Ruth, I know you sometimes listen. So it was nice to share that with you guys. And Brian, the two Brians, Brian, Avid Front Row isn't here tonight, but Brian Kelly and Avid Brian, Superstar Brian, your input's been really fun. It's been nice to build on that first chat we had back in August last year when we were just pre-season. And I think it just adds a bit more flavour to what me and Lee have been doing over the last, how long is it now? Not too far off a year. So grateful for everything that you guys are doing, and let's figure out what we're going to do next to keep people entertained over the summer.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Michael.